Welcome everyone. We have kind of a rock star with us today. I am so excited about this. I'm just going to tell you her name right now. Sometimes I do intro and then say the name. I'm just telling you right now because we're going to get some screams, some shout outs out there. This is Yara Golden. And I am telling you guys, this is going to be a really fun interview. Let me tell you a little bit about Yara. I got to know Yara, it's been almost a year.
I think a little over a year now.
And this girl is amazing. I am truly honored to call her my friend. She is crazy successful in her business, which is why we have her here, because we want her to teach you. But let me tell you a little bit about her. She has her own business, of course, Storytelling LLC, and she teaches people how to tell stories. And she teaches people, she does done for you. She's on some of the biggest stages. And I'll tell you what, the first time I heard her present, I had seen some of her stuff. The first time I heard her present, I was blown away. And you guys, I'm an avid reader. I've read so many of the business books. I have seen so many presentations. Yara blew me away. And do you remember right after that, I came up to Yara and I said, you're amazing. I want to work with you. And it ended up happening in a little bit more of a roundabout way than I had expected, but truly, I take notes when people are teaching, but with Yara, I could not do it fast enough. I don't know if this was even allowed. I grabbed my phone. I turned on the recording thing. I don't know if you know that one.
This is so amazing to hear. I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's amazing. Since then, she and I have been working together, partnering on some projects. I hired her to help me with some of the things that I'm working on. I have some massive goals. She's someone who can handle what I'm trying to do. And so Yara, let me tell you first some of and then I'll tell you some of what she's done, and then I'm going to tell you some of what I've seen working with her myself. So she was on the Funnel Hacking Live stage. What year was that? Was that in
2018? Yeah.
2018. And then you did it again. They've had you back over and over again. Now, not only that, but they've actually hired her to help do their business. Some of her clients are some of the biggest people in marketing that you would recognize their names. And she truly is amazing. And one of her core things that she teaches is about how, well, I shouldn't say it's one of, okay, because she takes care of it all. But she talks about how most relationships struggle because of bad communication. And she helps you fix it. And then of course I'm having her work with me on some things, and I'm having her do it like a done for you, and email sequences. In fact, I'm gonna have you talk more about all the things that you do for your clients, because the real truth is that most people struggle with this. They don't really know how to do it. I had a list of over like 150,000 people who had opted into my stuff outside of my other business that I had grown. 150,000 emails that should be super powerful in my business sitting there because I don't really know quite what to do with it. And so Yara's totally taking care of that for us. We've seen crazy, amazing success as she writes our copy and our text. It's been unbelievable. And she takes care of clients at all different levels. I'm missing so much, I know. And she partners with some of the biggest names. And it's just an honor to have you.
I'm gonna hire you to just introduce me from now on. Like, this is I'm having an amazing day now. Thank you.
Okay, we're done. That's it. They're like, no.
You're like saying, like, my love bucket is like overflowing. I'm like, yeah, words of affirmation. Let's do this. This is amazing.
And I'll tell you, one of my let me say one last thing, and then we are just going to I just want you to learn from Yara. Now that you say that, I'm just going to say probably one of my biggest compliments in my entire business, not kidding, is when she was writing copy for me and she needed to know my story. So we sat for a couple hours and I told her all the stories, all the failures and all the crazy dumb things I had done and my successes and all the stuff, so that she could write things for me, write my copy and my text and emails and all the stuff. And later on, I read what she had written and it was emotional. I started crying and I was like, oh my goodness, I love this. And then I told her this. I said this, we were in a business meeting, and I said, I love this. And I said, this is the problem. I read this, what you've written about me, and I'm thinking, she's writing in my voice or whatever. And I said, what the problem is, I feel like, I'm her had some very nice things to say about me at that point, and that was a real highlight for me. So anyway.
Oh, I'm so glad. You know, it's really interesting. I had this conversation with somebody earlier today when I think one of the beautiful things about having the trust and the confidence in a copywriter or in somebody to tell your story is that when we're sitting with our story, we don't think that it's all that great. You know, we have what Myron calls it's just me-itis, right? Like, oh, it's just me. This is my regular life. Oh, that time that happened to me. It's not a big deal. But when you approach those stories with an outsider's perspective and you allow that person to ask you questions and figure out like what's the thing that makes you tick, right? Like what makes you who you are. And I'm infinitely curious about who people are and why they do the things that they do. And so it just lines up in this really cool way where if I can find the interest and the love for the thing that you've decided to devote your life to, I know that I can present that story to an audience in a way that will cause the same response from them.
Wow. Okay, so I want to get into you teaching them the principles that you teach because you're so good at it. But first, I want them to hear a little bit of the backstory. Tell them a little bit about how did you get into this? Because you always an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I got into this in the most roundabout way. It was pretty crazy. I was actually going through a divorce back in 2014. I'd been married for right around 10 years. I had 2 little kids. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for longer than I had kids. I hadn't worked for close to 15 years. Close to 15 years at that point. I hadn't worked. And so I really found myself in this position where I was like, I have bills and I have an apartment and I'm on my own. And I really need to like adult for the first time ever because my ex-husband used to take care of everything. And I didn't know how. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember a girlfriend of mine at that point saying, well, Yara, you could always get a job at Nordstrom. And Teresa, this fire like burned my insides. It was like, you don't work at Nordstrom's, you shop at Nordstrom's, right? and it has nothing to do, like there's nothing wrong with working at Nordstrom's. Like do whatever job lights you up, right? Like I'm totally great with that. But I just knew that that wasn't the path for me. I knew that I was capable of so much more than that. And it irritated me to no end that that was how she saw me or how I perceived her to see me, right? And so fortunate enough for me, I was surrounded by a lot of people who were in the coaching industry, who were in the online space. And I started seeing these people like literally getting paid thousands of dollars to get on the phone and have a conversation. And I was like, I could do that. Like, let me ask them, you know? Little did I know that in order to get people on the phone, you really needed to learn how to run a business and how to market and how to sell and how to, all of these things. And so that's really where my journey began. I started sharing my story because in my divorce, and in I'm sure many divorces, people want to pick sides. And I was very clear that there was no bad guy. We were creating a great co-parenting relationship. We really had done the work to figure out what had happened and if there was a path forward for us. And I didn't want anybody to point the finger at him. So as a writer, I did what felt natural to me. I kind of took to Facebook and I started telling the story. I was like, listen, if anyone's going to tell this story, it's going to be me because I want you to see this through my eyes. I want to give you my perspective on what's going on. What happened was that I started getting flooded in my inbox with people saying, I'm in a similar situation. How are you doing this so gracefully? Can you help me navigate XYZ? And that's where I saw the door open into coaching, where I was like, oh my gosh, I could actually help these people with the problems they have. And James, my partner now, and he was like my brand new boyfriend at that point, he says, you should be a relationship coach. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, do you not see the disaster that I just created? Like, nobody wants me to coach them through their relationship problems. And he goes, actually, that's exactly why. He says, because of all of the things that you learned while going through that. He says, are you a better person on the other side of it? And I was like, oh yeah, 100%. He's like, can you help people become better people on the other side of this? And I was like, oh, yes, I can. Right. And so that's kind of where I got started. And And I built that business, and I had some $10,000 months, and I had some like horrible months. And it was like this stop and go type of situation where I was just,
what? Your business was up and down? What?
oh yeah, I know. It's so weird, right? Everyone thinks success is a straight line.
Yeah.
I was very much stuck in that squiggle in the middle where I was like, it's awesome, it sucks, it's awesome, it sucks. And I was in these mastermind groups, right? So I got around other entrepreneurs who were infinitely more successful than I was. And I felt like a minnow in this pond, this ocean with sharks and whales. And I was like, wow, they have teams and they have budgets and they have platforms and like hundreds of thousands of people in their audiences. But in the back of my mind, I was like, but they're still having all of the problems that my clients are having in their relationships. And that's when I really put together that the problems, like you were saying earlier, that we have in relationship one-on-one are the same problems that we have in a relationship one-to-many. And that comes back to ourselves, right? Like, how willing are we to allow ourselves to be seen for everything we are and everything we're not? How willing are we to plant a flag in the ground and say, I don't like this and I do like that, or I believe this and I don't believe that? It's difficult one-on-one. I mean, think about it in your intimate relationship. Like, there are things where you're like, oh, I gotta have this conversation with him and what's gonna happen. Now think about it, 1 to 150,000 people. Like, by the
way, keep it personal.
Yeah, it just expands, right? And so one day there was a woman in one of these masterminds who approached me and she said, Yara, I read everything that you write on Facebook. I love it. It resonates with me. I feel sometimes like I could have even written it myself. She says, if I had the time. She's like, have you ever thought about writing for somebody else? And I swear, Teresa, that was a question that changed my life, because at that point I was making consistently about $2,500 a month, like barely like staying afloat, right? Paying my bills, making sure my kids were okay, banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to market this business, how to get it to grow. Yeah. And when she asked me that, I was like, yes, I'll write for you, like I'm happy to write for you. And I literally charged her $2,500 a month to write emails for her company, replaced my income, shut down my coaching business, and went all in to copywriting. And what happened was that because of the relationship aspect that we were bringing to the communication with her audience now, they came to life. And really, like overnight, the back end of her business appeared. Because other than that, she was doing Facebook ads and acquiring, but never
front end leads and sales.
Yeah, not really paying attention to the back end. And so word got out, and no joke, within 30 days, I had made $25,000 in 30 days, right? And I remember I was like, I felt like Wile E. Coyote strapped to a rocket. And I was like, don't screw it up. Don't screw it up. I was so scared because I'd never seen that much money before. I'd never made that much money before. And I'd never had the responsibility of other people's trust in me at that level before, And so I got to level up very quickly in order to maintain that and then help it grow even further. So it was very strange. Like I was a relationship coach. I still believe that I'm a relationship coach. I just do it like in a very Inception-y kind of way now.
Yeah. So first of all, the Wile E. Coyote visual is like the best I've ever heard. That was awesome. And then I have a question about something that you said, because you said something really powerful. You talked about how it's almost like the yin and the yang. You talked about how people didn't know how to let people see the good things about them and the bad things. Okay, so a lot of people, they let people see the good and maybe a little bit of the bad, and they pretend like they're letting people see all the bad. Why is it so important to see both?
So I think it's super important because your story, your history is really, whether you realize it or not, it colors everything that you do in this world, right? Like we are the the pinnacle of every single brick that we've laid, right? Like we're standing on the top of this pyramid, but we've laid every brick, and every one of those bricks is our experiences, our relationships, our conversations, the things we've done, the things that we haven't done, all of the things make us who we are. And so the content that we put out, the products that we, sell to people, the relationships that we have, they're all colored by those experiences, right? And so I believe there's a huge push over the last couple of years for self-acceptance and self-love and self-care and all of these things, right? And a lot of that for people looks like, well, we'll go to the spa, we'll get a facial, we'll go shopping, like we'll sleep longer, drink more water. To me, self-love is really about being able to look at the shadow version of yourself and all of the things that you wish hadn't happened in your life and say, I see you and I reclaim my power because I can now tell the story about what that meant for me. I can't control the fact that it happened. However, I can control the story that I tell myself about it and who I became because of it, right? So I am who I am because of everything that's gone on in my life and because of all of the pieces of me rather than despite them. And so I think that permeates your messaging and your content and your marketing, and it attracts the right person. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a phone call with somebody, like that I'm onboarding them or that I'm going to write content for them, and they'll say something and I'm like, that happened to me too. Like, how did you appear right here? Like, we have such a similar story. We have such similar experiences. And even though I don't speak them, there's like a vibe. There's a vibe. There's an energy to it. And so I think that's why it's incredibly important for us to be really, really honest and authentic about who we are and the experiences that have shaped us.
So how do you do that in your copy? When you are writing for someone, because even when we were talking with each other, it was emotional for me because I was reliving some things that were hard, that were, powerful learning experiences in my life. And you're able to take that and put it into copy. And so how do you teach? Because I know you also teach people how to do it for themselves. And then people who want more help, you can help them with that side. But tell us what you teach people.
So I teach people to look back, to mine the experiences of their lives for the gold, right? Because I know you're a very spiritual person. There is every seed of adversity brings with it like the solution, right? Or, I'm not huge on like quotes, but I'll kind of get it. but it's, I feel like our mess is our message. And so if we look back on our lives and we think, okay, what are the milestone moments that pop out to me where I'm like, when that happened, I was never the same again, right? Like after I read that book, like something in me changed and nothing was ever the same again. Like, I remember a couple of months after I had my daughter, Sophie, in 2009, she's my youngest. I remember one day I was standing in the mirror in the bathroom and I still had pregnancy weight on me. I was soft and squishy everywhere. My boobs were giant because I was breastfeeding. And I just remember looking at myself and being like, I'm trapped in a body that's not mine. And this isn't the way that I want to live my life. Like it was this moment that I had. And I was like, I want to be one of those moms that people are like, there's no way that you have 2 kids, right? And so it was one moment, Teresa. It was like the tiniest little moment, but it shifted my behavior and shifted the trajectory of my life because I started going to Pilates. I started running. I got my Pilates certification. Like I lost weight. I went and, I became a different person because of it. And so that would be something that I would call a milestone moment. Once you identify those milestone moments, because there are many, right? We can go back to childhood. We can go back to grade school, middle school, high school. We can go to, after high school, college, and, early adulthood, all of those places and say, oh, like I met this person and things changed. I read this book and things changed. I went to this conference and things changed. But going back to those moments with an eye that's asking, what did I learn in that moment? What value, what belief of mine changed and what happened from there, right? I tell everybody, and I cannot stress how true my statement, the statement that I'm about to make is, and how many thousands of people I've said it to, that it just flies over their head.
Okay.
I changed my entire life by asking myself these three questions. How did I create this for myself? Personal responsibility, right? No matter what.
Good or bad. You might be in a bad situation or a good one, right?
Exactly. How did I create this for myself? 2, what did I learn from it? And 3, how did I apply, how will I apply this moving forward? Period. End of story. Like, and they seem simple, but when you get to number 1 and it's something bad that you're like, oh, that I didn't have anything to do with this.
That's not my fault.
It's not my fault. Oh, he did that to me. She did that to me. They did that to me. It just happened. No, there was something you said yes to, you agreed to, you tolerated.
Yes, allowed to happen.
Right? Like, there's so many different ways. And it was one of the most painful lessons that I ever experienced, was accepting my personal responsibility for some of the things that have gone on in my life. But it's also simultaneously the moment that I've taken my power back. Right. And so that's really how I help people identify, like, well, what were those moments that really shifted who you are? And they don't have to be these huge, because that's one thing I hear a lot. It's like, well, Yara, I don't have a rags to riches story. Like, I don't have a cool story to tell. And I'm like, if you're living life, and if you've gotten to whatever age you are, you have significant moments that have happened in your life, just whether or not you've taken the time to look at them, or taken the time to look at them really honestly, or even have done an audit of those moments to say, hold on, who was I versus who I've become? And then, like, run through that timeline. It's a huge difference. Like, who I am sitting in front of you right now versus the woman who's trying to figure out how she's going to pay her bills in 2014 are, like, it's a different life.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think there will be a lot of people listening who will be going, okay, I believe you, and I want to believe you. I believe that I have some powerful moments, because I remember, maybe I can't think specifically what they are, but I know I've had some big moments where it was a big epiphany. I can't remember what they are, or I don't know if how would you help someone be guided to remember what those are, or pinpoint what those moments were? Is it a moment where they were passionate about something? Was it like, how do you guide someone?
All of them. Were you happy? Were you angry? Were you sad? Did you lose something? Did you gain something? Like, and this is the other thing, is like, sometimes people get into this mindset where it's like, oh, the stories I have to tell are only the bad ones, right? Like, I have to, like, show everybody all the skeletons in my closet. And that's not it by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, I have a hard and fast rule that if I am not on the other side of something, I'm not talking about it.
So if you can't share what you learned from it, and okay, I get it.
Yeah, like, I've got to be able to answer those 3 questions. So, like, if I have a disagreement with a friend, right? I could want to talk about it and be like, well, she did. But if I don't know how I caused it, like what part I played, what I learned from it, and how I'm going to move forward from that situation, I'm not talking about it. Because when I have an emotional and a vulnerability hangover the next day. Right? Because I'm like, oh, now that I've had time to process it and think about it and actually get to my answer, it's not actually what I wrote. Right? So that's one of my rules. And so I've had a lot of people who come to me and they're just like, well, I have, a sexual trauma that's happened to me, or I had an abusive relationship, or XYZ, right? And insert awful thing that's happened to them in their lives here. Do I need to talk about that? And I'm like, well, are you on the other side of it? Like, have you found the reason? Like, have you created a stepping stone for yourself based on that? Or is it still a stopping point for you? Right? That's really my litmus test for that kind of stuff. But as far as, so that's, it doesn't always have to be negative. You can always talk about awesome things too. Like when, you mentioned me speaking at Funnel Hacking Live, that was an amazing event for me, right? It was this huge highlight. Like, it was this just like full circle moment, right? I went from like stay-at-home mom who hadn't worked ever to like a stage teaching like 4,500 marketers how to like send emails. I was like, this is insane. How did this happen? But the way that I have trained myself to tell stories and the way that I tell them for my clients is that a lot of people have a difficult time sharing their stories because they think, well, this is very self-serving. It's very egotistical. It's all about me. I believe that sharing our stories isn't easy. It doesn't always feel good. It's uncomfortable because a lot of us don't particularly like to be in the spotlight or share our wounds, right? When we tell our stories, they are in service of our readers. We are basically saying, I've traveled this path, and I've encountered these obstacles, challenges, roadblocks, nemesis, enemies, whatever you want to say. And I see that you're somewhere along that path too. I would like to share my story with you so that you don't encounter that same obstacle, challenge, stopping point.
Wow. Wow. That's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that message and the way that you are trying to tie those together in the emails and in your copy and in the message you send to people, that's why there's a rallying around the message.
Yeah, because they resonate with it. You become a trusted advisor rather than a company or a marketer or a business that's trying to sell them something. You're somebody who they can trust, and you're somebody who they like, and you're somebody that they feel like they know. And it's not the know, like, and trust factor that, marketers want to throw around. It's like, oh, send them lots of emails so they get to know, like, and trust you. And it's like, well, if you're sending me check the box emails that don't mean anything to me, that I'm not even reading, that's not increasing know, like, and trust. But when I actually pull the curtain back and have a relationship with you and say, hey, this is who I am, take me or leave me, that is vulnerability. Like, that is resonance. Like, that is relationship, and that increases relationship capital. And it also allows them to see who you are and what you're made of and what you value and what you think is important and what you've put into your products, right? And so it's impossible for you to create something that doesn't align with who you are. And so the next logical step, like if you say, oh, I've built this amazing business with this company, and I did it for XYZ reasons, and these are all the challenges that I experience, and I want to do the same thing. It's the next logical step for me to be like, hey, Teresa, I read your story about how you did this thing. Can you help me? And you're like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. I happen to have a course where I help people do just that. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I noticed as you put things out for me and some of the other things that as I was hacking you and got emails from you, one of the things I noticed is that you are so gifted. That's the only word. You are gifted at being their voice, because I can tell my story. And I think a lot of times people out there tell their story, but it's because they're telling their story. And even if they're telling it in service, but the other person doesn't feel heard. And you write in a way that when the prospective customer or the loyal customers read, they're saying, yes, that's exactly, you are helping have their voice heard, where you're speaking for them, not just the person that you're like in my beginning.
I so appreciate you saying that. It's I think writing in other people's voices is a tricky endeavor, and I think is that a nice way to say it? It's you're telling somebody's story, right? Like I think it's something that I don't take lightly for people to trust me with their deepest, darkest, right? And that doesn't always mean it's their secrets or anything like that, but it's their squishiness, right? And I don't take that lightly. And so I always want to paint people in their highest and best light, even if they're going through something difficult. That doesn't mean that, just because you're showing up as your highest self doesn't mean that you're not having challenging times.
Right.
And I think one of the secrets that we've used in our agency when writing to an audience to get them to engage is that we always speak to the audience, to the reader's highest and best self as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see gurus and marketers and businesses out there commit or make is that they talk down to their audience, right? Like, I know all of this stuff. I'm the expert. I have all of the products. You should, you could. Why didn't you? If you don't, right? Like all of those
I'll
phrases.
show you, I'll teach you,
Yeah, like this is my experience. Look at my product. Look at all of the things that we're giving you. Like, it's just like, ugh, it makes me want to throw up. What I like to do is to bring the guru down and get shoulder to shoulder with the audience and say, hey, I'm just like you. I figured out like this handful of things over here. Everything else is a hot mess, right? Like, but I'm really good at these 5 things. And if you have an issue with any of these 5 things, like, I am more than happy to help you out. The reason that I learned those things is because let me tell you these stories about how I screwed up here and I messed up there and I totally stuck my foot in my mouth there and then I got it right and then I totally screwed it up again. But now I'm here, right? And I've helped 500, 1,000, 10,000 people get the same result that I was able to get. And so if I can help you, I'd love to do that. It changes the conversation. Like, I'm basically telling the reader, hey, I was able to figure this out. It took me a really long time, but I did it. And I know that if I can figure it out, you can figure it out too. But if you'd like my help collapsing time, I'm more than game for that, right? And so now we're talking peer to peer, not guru to like poor little person who doesn't know what they're doing.
Right, right. Okay, so I know that in your business, you help decrease the acquisition costs for new customers, like 80%. Decrease their costs to get new customers.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, obviously it's because of all these things we've been talking about. But if I were to say, so how do you do that? Like, you had to narrow it down. What is it?
I would say, well, first of all, you're speaking language that like goes way over my head. I'm the words person, acquisition, and like I remember somebody was like, what, click-through rates and all that stuff. I'm like, I let other people handle that, but I do know what you're talking about.
You have to go get customers for way cheaper.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, we do, and that's what I'm saying. I do know what you're talking about. I'm just like I'm laughing because it's like so not me. I think the way that we do it is this. When you put your lead magnet or your ad or whatever is generating your audience out there, they're seeing it, they're stopping, they're clicking, they're opting in, and they're getting on your list, right? That means that something you did or said or wrote or whatever called out to an issue or a problem that they're having. They raise their hand, right? They're like, me. And so now they're in your audience. To me, that means that you have a stocked pond of your ideal customer, your favorite fish, right? Like, you have a stock pond of the exact fish that you're trying to catch because your bait worked. You brought them in. And so for me, email and subject lines are a great way to gauge the interests of your audience. So if I talk to my audience and I'm just like, hey, webinars, and it's crickets, I'm like, all right, well, they don't want webinars. If I'm like, hey, email, and they're like, oh my gosh, we can't do this and we can't do that and we need help with that. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys want to hear more about emails. Same thing, do you want to learn about copy for ads or copy for this or copy for whatever it happens to be? I can test all of these different topics with them. When something hits or when it resonates with them or when I get a lot of replies to an email, I will take that same copy and I will put it on Facebook as an ad or as a retargeting ad because I already know that it resonated with my free audience, right? Like, I'm testing my content for free with my list. And when it works, then I put money behind it out on Facebook and I know exactly who I'm going to get and that it's going to work.
Attracting the people you already know you want. And that's
exactly. Yeah. So that's how we do it. That's how we reduce the acquisition cost, the cost of acquisition.
Awesome. Okay. I know people are going to want to know where to find you and all that stuff, but before we go there, I have one more question.
Okay.
The biggest mistakes you see people make.
Mistake. Big breath.
Like, do you want 50 or do you want 2?
No,
Whichever ones you think are.
So here's the thing. I think I have a few pet peeves. I think one of my first pet peeves is the first name, right? Like hashtag first name in emails, you know, the autofill thing. I think that we live in a day and age.
Because some people might not know what you're talking about, let me just clarify this. This is when you get an email from somebody you know you don't know them, and it says Teresa, da, 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 and you're like, you don't know me, you just had that auto populate.
Exactly. And so I think that we live in a day and age where people are pretty tech savvy. You know, people know that we have autoresponders and that there's mass emails and all of these things. And I really am a fan of respecting our readers and treating them like real human beings. And they know, like my audience knows that I'm not sitting down at my computer writing a personalized email to them every day or every couple of days. And yours does too. And so I really, really like to write to people the same way that I talk to them. Excuse me. And I don't go around saying Teresa, Teresa, Teresa all the time. Like that's just not how we talk to each other. And so I don't appreciate it when it's in emails that I receive or when I see it. I'm just like, just take it out. Just be real with your people, you know? So I think that's number one. Number two, I have a real problem when people, I would call it deplete their list, right? So let's say you have an audience and the only thing that you ever do, the only time you reach out to them is when you want to sell them something. I call this an entrepreneurial booty call, right? It's like, I'm going to call you when I want something and hope that you're going to respond.
Right.
And so what I really teach my students is what I call entrepreneurial overdraft protection, which actually looks like an investment campaign. And so these are emails that are written with the sole purpose of increasing relationship capital with your audience. And so these are the things that you would send out between your sales sequences. So let's say you run a sale and it's, you know, a 2-week promotion period. After that 2 weeks, you would send them out emails 2 or 3 times a week saying, hey, you know, here's something I learned. Here's a cool new product that I found, or here's a lesson that someone in one of my groups found. You know, you're just nurturing them and you're giving to them so that they feel like they're being invested in as well. And the next time that you put a sales sequence in front of them or that you run a promotion, there's actually there's a balance there for you to withdraw from. So I think that's another thing. Like I hate when I get emails and it's like, you're selling me, you're selling me, you're selling me. I'm just like, just stop, like enough already. What have you done for me lately? Right. And,
why do I feel like bursting into song right now?
And then the other, I would say the last one is the daily emails. I'm not a fan. I know that there are a lot of people who are super successful with them. A lot of people teach that you should be emailing your list once or twice a day. I unsubscribe from those lists as quickly as possible because I just don't have time for that much noise or clutter in my inbox. And I think that when you start creating content on that scale, the chances of it being like really impactful are very, very low, right? It's like, I feel like I call that check the box content where it's just like, oh, I need to send an email today and tomorrow and the next day, right? And I'm not really putting any thought behind it. I've been on Seth Godin's list for years. He sends a daily email, short, sweet, super insightful. Like I love it, but he is the unicorn amongst the daily emailers. Right. So I would say those are the 3 biggest mistakes that I see people make.
Okay. And I love that because this is the deal. I like to have people on here who are the rule breakers. They break the old rules, they create new rules. And all 3 of those are things that a lot of other people do, but you're like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. No, I'm just like, nope.
Successful. Yeah. And I love that. So I think people are going to be wondering, okay, you know, they got a lot of great content. Some people will want to go do what they can do from the things you've taught. Some people might want to see what else you have to offer. Some people might want you to do stuff for them, do emails for them. And let me be clear, you don't just do emails. You do emails, you do copy for funnels. You do, everything.
Basically, if it has words, we do it.
So let's at least let them know where to find you, or, you know, what we'll put in a link. But let us
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. So I'll give you 2 websites. So
Okay.
if you want to learn how to do what it is that I do, you can go to subscriberreviver.com, and that is a 15-day challenge that we put together. It's $47, and I will walk you exactly through my entire story selling process. If you're interested in us doing the writing for you, you can visit yaragolden.com/agency. And my name is Yara. It's Yara, golden like the color. And you can actually book a time to speak. And if you book a time, you're actually going to speak to me. I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone with people and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to get on the phone with you. And I was like, yeah, what do you think this is? Like, I want to talk to people, you know? So yeah, so those are the 2 best places to find me. And obviously, Facebook and Instagram, all those places are also awesome.
Okay, I just have to have you guys notice 2 things. Number 1, you saw how eloquent, even without any script, what you sound like. You sound like it was all planned out and written because you're so eloquent. Second thing, shows a lot about her heart. The fact that you said golden like the color. She didn't, most people would be like golden like the money, golden like the brick. No, she's all golden like the color. That just, and that's been my experience with you, that is where her heart is. So you guys know, I only bring you the best, and I'm not bringing you somebody who is faking it or who is not going to be having your best interest at heart. So thank you, Yara. Really, really appreciate your time. You let us have a lot of your time. Thank you so much. That was really
thank you for having me. This was awesome.
All right. You have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, my friend.
Bye.